Hello again. Today we're going to be looking at the second game that Cloud9 played this year, playing against Evil Geniuses. This time they're on blue side. Let's get the easy bit out of the way first. Evil Geniuses on red side ban Corki, Caitlyn and Zeri. I touched on all of these champions as red side bans in my video on Cloud9 vs Golden Guardians. On red side, you want to ban champions that you don't have an answer to. Corki doesn't have common answers outside of trying to match with Victor, and Caitlyn along with something like Lux dominates the lane so hard regardless of what you pick into it. I think that teams just haven't figured out good answers to Zeri yet, and a lot of teams aren't comfortable with her kit yet, but she also released pretty overtuned and the game was played on her release patch. Cloud9 on blue side banned Twisted Fate, Senna and Karma in their first round of bans. Evil Geniuses are known for having a proactive early game, and Twisted Fate suits this style of play. I think that blue side has much more freedom to target ban, since they don't have to answer the first pick of the draft. Senna seems like a respect ban towards Danny, but also, like Zeri, is a champion that was pretty overtuned on the patch the game was played on and has since been nerfed. Finally, Karma has a good lane into the Thresh that Cloud9 want to first pick, as well as being able to be played as Smite top, which Cloud9 may just not want to deal with. As I just mentioned, Cloud9 B1 Thresh. I spoke about this in the previous video with Cloud9 vs Golden Guardians, as Cloud9 actually banned it when they were on red side. Thresh is really flexible, and two of the most popular ADC picks at the moment are Aphelios and Jinx, who both love playing with Thresh. By securing the Thresh early, you gain the ability to trade ADC picks, as you're fine with having either of the two alongside the Thresh. Evil Geniuses respond with an R1 Jinx. They opt into the meta ADC trade and they pick the Jinx for themselves. Both Jinx and Aphelios are flexible enough to pick early in the draft and both have good scaling. I tend to favour the Jinx in isolation, however, depending on the pieces around Aphelios, he can be more valuable. The defining factor to me is who has the onus of starting the fight. If the Jinx team needs to go into the Aphelios team, then I slightly favour the Aphelios. However, if the Aphelios team needs to go into the Jinx team, I heavily favour the Jinx. I don't think either is particularly better or worse, so you can kind of just pick by player preference, and Danny seems like more of a Jinx player to me, so I'm fine with it. They follow this up with an R2 Xin Zhao. Xin's a champion that's grown on me the more I watch it in pro play and see it in solo queue. It has a pretty strong early game and causes the enemy lanes to play with more respect than a lot of jungle picks. I think this changed when he gained the ability to dash from like 1,000 units away if he lands his W. I don't think he scales particularly well in isolation, but the fact that he can soak pretty much unlimited damage for a duration by utilising his ultimate well makes him strong in late game 5v5s, provided they don't last an extended amount of time and his ultimate drops off. He's reasonably flexible in terms of what comps he can play in, although he favours disengage or pick comps. Cloud9 do know that it's a jungle pick though, as lane Xin Zhao isn't really a thing. Cloud9 respond to this by picking their own jungle on B2. They lock in Olaf. Olaf is really good into Jinx and Xin Zhao. He wins the early skirmishes versus Xin, and he can get into the backline in teamfights, ignoring Xin's disengage capability. Xinnel is practically useless in the 1v1 and 2v2, since Olaf just sits inside it and hits him. He can also run straight through Jinx's traps, which are her main way of creating space for herself in a teamfight. Once he's on her, she doesn't have a way of getting him off of her without having the Thresh pick on her side so that she can use the lantern. I do think the pick is punishable though. Heading into the late game, Olaf drops off a cliff if he doesn't have sufficient support from an enchanter, and with Thresh already locked in, I think it's pretty clear that C9 want to play an enchanter in the mid lane. I think this gives EG the potential to R3 Lulu alongside their Jinx, and then ban Soraka and Seraphine with their second round of bans. This leaves pretty much only Ivern, who I don't personally like with the Olaf as much as the three champs I just mentioned, since he uses shielding instead of healing. They follow that up with the B3 Aphelios. I've said pretty much everything I have to say about this pick already. It's flexible, it scales well, and it likes playing alongside Thresh. EG respond with an R3 Leona pick. I think this lost them the draft, to be honest. Like I said before, they had the opportunity to clinch the enchanter pool. Jinx Lulu works really well as a duo, as does Xin Lulu. Leona gets completely ignored by Olaf, and C9 now have prio in bot lane since Aphelios Thresh can use the range advantage to auto the Leona down if she oversteps in lane. I think the Olaf pick presented the first hole we've seen from Cloud9's drafting so far, but EG didn't exploit it and actually played right into C9's hands. Another good option is for them to pick Blitzcrank on R3 and then ban Soraka and Seraphine. By having the Blitzcrank, they have a really good lane matchup into the Thresh, and it pairs pretty well with the Jinx as well. Also, the Blitzcrank ultimate is an AoE shield break, so by banning Soraka and Seraphine who use the healing to synergize with the Olaf, you force mid into Ivern or Lulu if they want to pick an enchanter, and then the Blitzcrank R can break their shields and remove a lot of their value. Despite the Leona pick, EG do identify that mid lane enchanters work really well with Olaf. They take away the Ivern in their second round of bans after seeing it played the day before, as well as the Lulu that I mentioned earlier. The problem is they fail to take away the Soraka. Soraka is the single best enchanter to play alongside Olaf in my opinion. She has ridiculous raw healing output that gets boosted by Olaf's W, and she doesn't need to run into the fight with him to be able to heal him with her ultimate. This is the second big mistake I see from Evil Genius's draft. On the other hand, Cloud9 ban Ryze and Renekton in their second rotation. At this point they already have the intention to pick an enchanter mid lane to pair with the Olaf. If they don't, I think their other option is something like Orianna. The comp they're heading towards is more revealed than it was in their draft versus Golden Guardians yesterday, and a key weakness I see from the Olaf plus Enchanter plus Aphelios comp is losing to side lane pressure. Ryze is a great ban as it's a premier pick in 1-3-1 comps. I'm assuming Renekton is only banned to open up the blind pick Camille that they want to go for. I actually think there's worse matchups for Camille than the Renekton, but Cloud9 know that Renekton is ultra comfort for impact, so while I don't particularly like the ban, I don't hate it either. EG opt into an R4 Victor. They choose to blind the Victor in their mid lane just like Golden Guardians did the day before, but it's actually pretty good here. While Victor does give mid lane enchanters like Soraka a relatively free laning phase, he's capable of playing into the weakness that I mentioned earlier being side lane pressure. If Evil Geniuses pick a side laning top laner alongside the Victor, they can look to pressure both top and bot lane in the mid game and trade dragons for towers and map control. Cloud9 are currently lacking any form of hard engage, and Evil Geniuses already have Zins out, so it makes it pretty difficult to engage on the 3 in the 1-3-1 comp who are just holding the mid lane. After this, Cloud9 go for a B4 Soraka. The pick has ridiculous value when it's paired with Olaf. If you want to see what I mean by this, just go and look at when Blabber just runs at Jojo Pyun under his tower and kills him from full HP. If he ever doesn't have flash, they can do this. It's by far the best enchanter alongside Olaf in my opinion, and it just should have been banned in the second rotation. It also works really nicely alongside Aphelios. She can stand with him and just heal him through whatever dive Evil Geniuses want to go for and turn him into a secondary raid boss. They also pick up Camille on R5. They have to blind their top lane, and I think Camille's a reasonable pick here, especially with the Renekton ban coming through. It functions kind of like the Gnar that they picked the day before, where it can teleport into the fight if it would be the difference maker, but it wants to just sit in a side lane and draw pressure. While it's doing that, the rest of the team can set up on an objective and demand that the enemy come into them and contest it, and then just kite back. It also has the option to look for skirmishes with Olaf and Soraka in the mid game, provided it doesn't fall too far behind in the lane phase. Foreshadowing alert. Tryndamere on R5 is a really good pick here for Evil Geniuses. It's playing really hard into the side lane win condition I've been talking about, and at certain points during the game it did look like Impact was going to carry the game. As a side note, I think the game was winnable for Evil Geniuses if Impact didn't itemize so badly, but in any case, Tryndamere has a really good matchup into Camille, being able to kill her in the side lane if she ever misuses her E and puts it on cooldown. I really like the pick here and don't really have anything negative to say about it. Overall, the draft in this game was much closer than in the previous C9 game I analysed, and had EG not fallen as far behind in mid specifically as they ended up doing, I could see them having a good shot at winning this game through 1-3-1. If Victor was strong enough to apply pressure in the opposite side lane all those times Tryndamere was trying to split push, the game could have looked very different. Cloud9 showed where their comp was going in this draft much earlier than they did in their previous game, and so it was easier for Evil Geniuses to decide which direction to take their own draft. They also didn't manage to choose their matchup in all 3 lanes like they did versus Golden Guardians, and the top lane counterpick was huge for Evil Geniuses. That said, EG didn't punish the gaps that C9 showed in their draft hard enough. If they had banned Soraka, I don't think Blabber would have been able to take over the early and mid game as hard as he did. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing more drafts from Cloud9 and maybe making more analysis videos. Also, if there's any games from other teams in maybe different leagues that you'd like to see analysed, drop a comment with which game you'd like me to review and I'll take a look at it. Cheers, bye!